everyone. I'd like to take the opportunity to call the special meeting of City Council for Friday, January 29th to order. The first item on our agenda this morning is under Mayor's business, and under 2.1 I have presented a memo in regards to the 2021 budget reconsideration discussion that I'm wanting to bring forward today with respect to the reconsideration of two motions from Monday. And so I want to begin by just reading a bit of the preview. And this came as a result of, I think, Monday's meeting for me, and a bit of reflection on the discussion and the direction that we had provided on Monday. And I feel it's important in 2021 to continue to support the commercial and business property owners during these very difficult, challenging times of the pandemic. The approved 10.9% increase to commercial, I feel, would be too difficult for some sectors in our commercial community, and I'm seeking council support this morning in reconsidering the motions passed by council at the January 25th, 2021 meeting. This is as authorized under the Community Charter, Section 131, that gives the mayor the ability for opportunity for reconsideration, and the following motions from the January 25th, 2021 regular meeting regarding the 21 budget are placed back on the floor for reconsideration. And the first motion was 712-2, that the forecast assumptions used in preparing the 5-year financial plan as presented within the report 21007 from the Chief Financial Officer be approved, and further that council reaffirms that the market change reduction will be adjusted in the current proposed mill rate. So at this point, I'm looking for a motion for that reconsideration, Brenda? Or do I make the motion that I'm proposing?
Through your worship, that motion is active on the floor at this moment.
Okay. And propose the amendment to the motion at this point. So the amendment that I'm proposing to the motion then, that the above motion be amended to indicate that council confirms the market change reduction will be adjusted to the current mill rate for all classes of, except for commercial and utilities. So I'm moving that amendment. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Wilbur. Discussion. Councillor Wilbur.
So yeah, I'm actually happy to support this amendment, and as I always, I think I kind of mentioned it at Monday's meeting, I mentioned again, there's always a ripple effect. So I think when we look at these classes, it affects some of those smaller players in our community as well, who have just gotten started or are still trying to get started again. So I think with COVID and everything, it's unsure. We're still in the boat of unsureness that we do what we can to keep them going within the community and help them bridge restarting again.
Thank you. Further discussion? Brenda? Thank you. Councillor Dober?
Hi. Well, I have a couple things around it. One is, you know, a 10% or plus increase to businesses. You know, going through the pandemic, I think it is a bit of a struggle for some. I think there's some that had, record years. My concern a little bit with it is, last year we gave $1 million break, and, at that point was it, why wasn't it educated to those businesses that it would go up this year? And then the other part of it is, what do we do next year? So if we give a bit of a rebate this year, which I think it's the right decision, but, how do we make this so it doesn't happen next year and educate, all those businesses that, look, we're giving another break this year, but just so you know, next year it's got to get back up to par, and there's going to be a bigger jump next year too. You know what I mean?
Sure. And I think, Councillor Dober, that's part of that communication strategy and a plan that you put in place for us. And we do every year, trying to ensure we have public engagement and have the discussion with our community on all the sectors around our rate increases and taxes and budget implications. And I think we took a lot of pressure last year that we didn't make enough of a cut, but we did reduce the anticipated revenue we were going to need in terms of meeting that long-term strategic plan we have of removing the burden of our operating costs from Peace River Agreement into a capital. And so that's part of that ongoing discussion we have. And so you're absolutely right. I think this year we have that discussion with our community and the public sessions that we have and public meetings and town hall meetings with respect to engaging people in the discussion. And the hard part is getting people to participate, but that's our job to continue to push that message out. But this will ensure, for me, it will mean that we'll make, this will push it out further. For me, it was about, let's try and lessen the burden a little bit this year and spread it out over 2 or 3 years. And so that was the intent of my reason for the reconsideration.
Yeah, and I totally respect that, Your Worship. I think it's, I think it's the right thing to do. I just think it'd be nice to, have a plan what it's going to be for next year, just so we're not dealing with this again next year. And, us as the business community understand that, we got a break last year. We're getting a break potentially this year, but it's got to catch up eventually, right? So that's all I would. And I get it's probably impossible to reach every business too. So
yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Javetkov.
So we just dealt with this 5 days ago. We had all the information that we have now. Nothing has changed. The motion that we passed was pretty well unanimous as far as I can remember. My concern is that this is, I guess, something that's fairly consistent over the years where we reduce taxes based on, I guess, the economic times. And my feeling is that we're here to run the city. And I guess businesses are there to run their business. Now, over the years, because we've reduced taxes, because we've absorbed increases in assessments and that type of thing, brought us to this point in time when we're struggling to deal with our capital infrastructure. We've had horrendous experience with our sewer system. Our roads infrastructure is in poor shape, to extremely poor shape. We have never in the last 20 years had an opportunity to improve some of our, what I call slum areas, where our road infrastructure and drainage infrastructure is lacking and in really poor shape. An example is the subdivision east of Safeway. So continuing to reduce taxes based on, I guess, the economics of the day, especially when the decrease, like for example, last year where the city took a hit of over $1 million of money that could be used for capital, and the benefit to business in town was negligible, really. I just don't see this as a positive move. I think, at some point we have to accept the fact that we're in dire financial straits here in the city of Dawson Creek and start looking after the city. So that's my concern. I will be voting against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. And my only response would be the reflection. Absolutely, we all had the material on Monday, and for me, as I was thinking about it on Monday night and reflecting on the changes that we made, and the booking of the the additional 560,000 that we didn't anticipate coming into our Peace River agreement, and almost 11% increase on commercial. For me, it was that reflection. And, I still am worrying about hotels. I'm still worried about the hairdressers and the barbers who were shut down and are still struggling to get back on their feet, and hotel occupancy running in the community at 20 to 30 to 40%. Those folks are still struggling. And to me, it's my hope that an 8% increase is going to be difficult for folks. But it is about a long-term strategy we have. It's about a long-term strategy for 7 to 10 years to get us to where we have that strategic objective of moving 70% of that that money out of operations into capital from Peace River Agreement. And I think we set it over 7 years, and to me it's about trying to be diligent and responsive to the conditions that have impacted our businesses and residents over the last year. And I still think we've got a solid plan in place for building a strong financial future. And to me, we've got the ability. I don't agree with the statement that we're in dire financial position. We're in a very good position moving the community forward. This council's done an amazing bit of work in helping move into a positive direction that I think sets us in a position to be a solid financial future, and that's my purpose for bringing this forward today. But I thank you for your comments. Councillor Parslow.
Just a procedure. We're talking about an amendment to a motion here, aren't we?
That's right.
So the amendment deals with, it's more like a affirmation that we were going to be looking at yield from taxation rather than the ups and downs of assessment and adjustment of mill rate. So I will be having to vote against the amendment because I think it's a much better fiscal policy to look at yield from taxation rather than the variable things that are to do with mill rates and assessment. So I did not see how the comments that have been made were speaking more, I thought, to the second motion, right? So I would like us to retain as a practice keeping the yield constant rather than looking at assessments and mill rates. So I'm not, what's the word? I don't wish to come across as not listening to the comments, but I thought they were more related to the second motion rather than the first motion.
Thank you. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I don't disagree with the sentiment that a 10+% bump in 1 year is significant for businesses. I do, I appreciate that we cut taxes for commercial by 5% last year. And as Councillor Javetka said, for some people, it was negligible. They carried on business as usual. But to your point, it was, I think, inconsistently beneficial from sector to sector. Some of the businesses I've talked to appreciated it. With respect to communicating it, I know one piece we were challenged in is it was reported in the media based on percentage. And some of our neighbors passed a sweeping percentage, which seemed impressive, but when you dug down into the numbers, it wasn't necessarily a great dollar value because a significant portion of their revenue comes from sources other than commercial assessment. So, I mean, I don't know that I would call an 8.16% bump in a year a decrease. That's not how I'd characterize it. It isn't as much of an increase as was originally slated, but it is important to note that that's still real money for businesses that are some trying to stay afloat. So I don't disagree. I do have a question of staff. The document we've been provided here, the projected rates, the difference we're foregoing, which is 1 point or 2 point, is it just 2%? We're cutting, or 2.5? We're reducing from the original amount, 2.5, correct? Oh, Blair needs to answer.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Earl. That is yet to be determined. That
Okay.
will be dealt with in the next motion.
Okay.
So
Oh,
there
this
are,
motion just, okay.
there are three options that are before you, I believe 2, 2.5%, 3%. If I could, Your Worship, with a little, the motion, the amendment that's on the floor is intended for the 2021 budget only. So the policy that council adopted would revert back post this motion. Now, I'm not sure if council would look for clarity to add on except commercial and utility for the 2021 budget. I don't know if that would benefit.
That would benefit from my standpoint, yes. Okay.
So, Brenda?
Through your worship, just an additional amendment.
Okay. To add to,
Can I-
for the 2021 year?
Can I make that additional amendment then, that it's for the 2021 year and pertaining only to commercial and utilities? Would that do it?
That
Thank you.
part is already there. It is
Okay.
just,
The 2021 year?
Okay.
if
Thank you.
council so wish, I throw that out just for clarity. The intent, I think, is the understanding it was for the 2021, but as they say, things are better if we would include that.
Thank you. So we'll take that as an amendment to the proposed amendment to the motion. So do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilbur? Councillor Dober, one more time?
You want to hear my voice one more time? Is that what you? I just have a few things. One, so right now it's at 10%. So like, is this motion just to revisit it, or like, is it going to go down to 8
So
or 7%? Like, are we talking about that right now? Or
So
is
no,
that-
we're just dealing with the amendment that we will amend the market change reduction will be adjusted in the current
Okay.
proposed mill rate for all classes except for commercial and utilities. Brenda?
Your worship, the discussion at this point is just to add for the 2021 year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So, thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment to
I had
add
a few more
2021
things,
to
sorry,
the?
Your Worship. Oh, you cut out there. I guess one thing for me is that, I understand keeping to what we've committed to or what's been committed to in the past, but this is a pandemic that is way out of anybody's control. So, there's got to be, some variances in this. And then, I think the thing, I guess this is maybe a little off topic, but that I'm misunderstanding a bit the role in city council. But, at my orientation, it was clear, the number one thing that was clear from Brenda, Your Worship, and Blair was that to be open-minded at these meetings. So, my intentions are to come to these meetings and listen to everybody's ideas. And then, make a decision after that, what's best, what I think is best for the community. So I find it hard, and no disrespect to anybody, but I find it hard when some are talking and already have their decision made. Like I feel like they're not listening to the voices of everybody. And maybe I'm completely misunderstanding what the reasoning for council and mayor is, and I'm new to this. So, but I want to listen to everybody and then make a decision. I don't, I think that's the right way to do it. And if I'm misunderstanding or I misunderstood my orientation, then I can be corrected. But, it just bothers me a bit that decisions are already made when we're not listening to everybody's opinion.
Thank you. We're going to do our best to stay on the emotions, and I appreciate the input. Councillor Parslow.
So I'd just like to learn about the impact this would have on business.
Sorry, Councillor Parslow, I did your mic, if you can just,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Like for the motion that's coming up, we have some information. What is the impact of this in dollars savings for businesses?
So-
I don't have a mic, but point of order, I think we're just discussing adding 2021.
Thank you.
So if I can, I'm just going to interrupt. So yeah, honestly, I've done my best to try to allow for discussion to occur and give council the opportunity to have engagement. But as I've reflected on our procedures, we really go out, and that's on me. I'm the chair of the meeting, and but we have people who speak without being identified by the chair. We have people who speak out of order. We have councillors who identify topics that are completely outside, and that's on me. And so I take full accountability for that. And but I have been reviewing our council procedure bylaw. We are going to tighten up because what happens is it just creates confusion for council. As you guys are making decisions and trying to then influence the direction that we give to administration without some clarity. So this isn't on you guys, this is completely on the chair and the mayor. But I am going to tighten it up because unfortunately it gets to this where all of a sudden we're having a town hall meeting in which we should be respecting the procedures of council, the policy that council has set for the procedures for these meetings, the respect to the chair, people who all of a sudden interrupt and speak out that's completely outside the bounds of protocol of respecting the rules and order that we have as council. And some of that obviously is a process that we need to ensure we do a better job of following. And I'm committing to you guys that I am going to change it because it just creates too much confusion for you as well as for our administration. So the motion and the amendment right now is that we are discussing amending, adding 2021 onto this proposed amendment to this motion. And the other thing I will say, it's clear in our policies and procedures, council are allowed to speak once to an amendment. And I give you guys full latitude. I think it's healthy for us to have that engagement and discussion. But that's what gets us, I think, sometimes chasing down stuff that we just don't stay focused on it. So anyway, I didn't mean to bring that into here today, but anyway, so the amendment is that we're discussing right now is that we add 2021 onto the proposed amendment to the motion. Is there any further comments on that proposed amendment? Councillor Parslow, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm asking for 2021. What's the impact? So I think they're related.
Okay, Flavia?
Yes, through your worship. So for 2021, if we reduce at 2.5%, the savings for the commercial, not
Sorry.
here. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm referring to the amendment that where the mill rates were going to be adjusted just on assessment. So with just that factor, what is the impact of this on the commercial sector for 2021? I'm not talking about the later proposal of 2.5, 2 or 3. I'm just talking about the fluctuation in assessment.
Which was on the report,
Sorry.
on the draft 1, on the draft 3 report. Yeah, the just for commercial. Okay, let me just.
If I could help your worship here possibly to go, the amendment that we're talking about has added except for the commercial and utilities for the year 2021 budget. There, we don't know the impact until the next motion, which will deal with if council so chooses to look at a reduction of 2%, 1%, 3%. I think that question would better fit there. The motion, as I interpret right now, is that we will adjust the policy that mayor and council have adopted that says should, and I'll give an example for the public, should the assessment drop by 1%, the council of policy is to begin their budget discussions with a 1% addition in the mill rate for the coming year so that you're back to zero, knowing what the cost increases will be for the coming year then. So the question you're asking, councillor, is probably best answered under the next motion. This only says we would not apply it for this. And then the question you're asking, what's the financial impact? What's the impact to the budget? Will flow through a motion and under the next one that may say 1%, 0.5%, 3%. I'm just not sure the motion that'll come if I'm, but to answer the impact based on this, it really depends. You could vary. By varying the policy as put forward. Right now, we don't know what that variation is. It's just that it would be not put forward under the existing policy. It's doing my best here.
Thank you.
Can I?
Yeah,
can I-
finish.
Thank you. So this motion says that the tax rate would, and the assessment would both be looked at before, and be adjusted so that the yield is constant. So what I'm trying to say is, based upon the assessment change that has occurred in commercial, right, the fact is that we are not going to vary the commercial and utilities by the fluctuation in assessment. We're going to keep that mill rate constant. So what is the impact? Because we know we're working with an assessment figure that's been given to council, right?
So council will deal with that if they make this decision, and council will deal with that from here in terms of saying, okay, here's what we're going to and how we're going to deal with the change in that market rate assessment. But they haven't made that decision at this point, so that determination in terms of how it's going to be adjusted will come behind that if council rescinds the motion of saying it will be adjusted by market change. Go ahead, Blair.
Your worship, bear with us. I think I have a little more clarity now from Councillor Parslow. So you're looking, if the overall market adjustment for commercial last year was an increase of 1%, you're wondering, was it 1%, was it 1.2? And this motion would negate that increase then, and then we'll start. So bear with us one moment.
I had done, I'm sorry, but unfortunately, I don't have access through. There's a whole report I gave. So, do you want to know how much was the market change
Yes,
for commercial?
for commercial.
Between last year and this year?
Yes.
8.9 million reduction
Which is, do we have?
in the assessed value.
8.9% reduction. Do we have a percentage on that?
The reduction was 1.8% versus last year.
There we go. So last year's market adjustment was a 1.8% reduction in the commercial assessed value. That's total commercial assessed value. I believe that answers the question you raised, say, what is the impact? So because we don't know the full of the next motion, I have to go back to that. That will be up to council. We are 1.8% lower this year in assessed value on commercial. Our policy would have seen mayor and council, and that's how the budget
Increase
was
the mill
built.
rate.
Raise it 1.8% and then discuss about the additional increases, whether that be, our cost of living increases, the cost of power, light, all of that. So.
Thank you. Do I have any further comments on the amendment that we're adding 2021 to the proposed amendment at this point? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parslow opposed. I don't, Councillor Dober, Councillor Kemp, I didn't see or I can't identify.
I'm in favor. This is Councillor Kemp.
Thank you.
Me as well, Dale.
Councillor
Your
Dober, thank you.
worship.
The motion passes. And now on the proposed amendment to the motion, that the above motion be amended to indicate that council confirms the market change reduction will be adjusted in the current proposed mill rate for all classes except commercial and utilities as amended by adding 2021. Are you ready for the question? Councillor Javetkov, you wanted to speak to that?
Yes, I just have another comment. I'm almost hesitant to comment here based on your I guess, scolding us. I wasn't sure.
Well, it wasn't a
if
scolding so much
I've
as
done-
informing council on the proper procedures that we should be adhering to that I've let move forward. And are procedures that council has approved, council's endorsed, council set, that has procedures in terms of how this council operates. And it's on me, not on you guys, in terms of how I've let that evolve outside, but it's clear in terms of that, and so I'll bring that back for council at the next meeting, just so we ensure we all have kind of that understanding of protocol, because I think it's got us into some areas that's caused some confusion for us as well as staff. So honestly, I don't want you to feel like I was scolding you. I was just trying to inform council on, there's some procedures here that we should be respecting.
I guess I didn't recognize any disruption to the procedures. I mean, especially now when you can't speak unless you got a red light on your mic. So anyways, I'll continue. At the concern that I'm going to be, stepping off base here. I just wanted to comment on, I guess, my experience over the years where we have reduced our revenue by adjusting the mill rate downwards, again, which has got us into a position here where we're trying to keep up on capital requirements here for the city. Our original strategy was to deal with this issue over 7 years. Well, that has already been extended to 10 years. If we continue to reduce our revenue, I can see where we'll be extending that to, 11 years, 12 years, whatever. I mean, it's a pattern that we've, I guess, adopted over the years that, we're, in my opinion, we're too willing to reduce our revenue for a limited benefit. I just don't think the businesses they're not getting the equivalent benefit that we are experiencing with the loss of revenue. So that's why I'm not in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. For the motion, now, on the amendment, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed, Councillor Parslow, Councillor Javetkov. I can't identify Councillor Kempf or Councillor Dober. Yes, Kempf and Dober.
Councillor Kemp is in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Dober. Thank you. So the motion passes 5-2 on the amendment. Motion number 2 that I'm bringing back for reconsideration is that Council allocate $570,000 of the excess of the Peace River Agreement grant to the Capital Reserve. And so I'm moving that motion be defeated. And if I have a seconder. Councillor Wilbur, discussion? Councillor Parslow? Oh, sorry, Councillor Brenda first. Go ahead.
Excuse me, through your worship. Point of order, the amendment was adopted, but the motion needs to be called on the motion as amended.
Oh, I'm sorry.
to bring you back to that.
Thank you. So we amended the motion of our Monday meeting, and so that was that the forecast assumption used in preparing the 5-year financial plan as presented be approved, and further that council confirms the market change reduction will be adjusted in the current proposed mill rate for all classes except commercial and utilities in 2021. So now we call the motion on that for approval as amended. Move Councillor Earl, Councillor Wilbur, and now I'm going to call the question on the motion as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parslow, Councillor Javetkov, Councillor Kemp, Councillor Dober.
Councillor Kemp's in favor.
Me as well.
Thank you. So the motion is approved now as amended, 5-2. And now, sorry, I'll bring back that motion number 2, that the motion to allocate $570,000 of the excess of the Peace River Agreement grant to be allocated to the Capital Reserve. And I'm making a motion that be defeated. Moved by Councillor Earl, seconded by Councillor Wilbur. And now for discussion, and Councillor Parslow.
Thank you. So I think, the staff has developed quite a bit of data here that I really appreciate. Good job again. And there was a last-minute handout that I don't believe. Have Councillor Dober and Kemp got this somehow?
So if I can, that'll be dealt with, I think, in that follow-up if this motion is defeated, because it can't, it flows from the rate setting that was the information that was on the mill rates that was set out in that information. This motion is just to say, are we going to allocate the entire $570,000 excess from the Peace River Agreement grant to our capital reserve?
Okay, well, thanks for your interpretation. That's fine.
Thank you.
And it's fine with me, what you said.
Thank
you. I think there's several issues here, so there's the desire to reduce the commercial and utilities by 2.5, and a method is being put forward of doing that, which is the use of the PRA funding, half of it going to capital, half to operating to cover off this loss of revenue. So I am not in favor of the use of the PRA funding to do this. I think we need to inoculate ourselves from using the PRA funding as best we can for operating purposes and use it for capital. That is the reason why we've got ourselves, and I would concur with the Mayor's previous statement, this council has done a lot of work in the use of the PRA funding, moving it from operating to capital, and I don't want us to use this. I think that there may be other ways of finding the equivalent dollars in the operating budget. And if we pass this motion, and it presupposes that we are in favor of the 2.5% reduction, and I do think that to make an informed decision, I need to know what the impact would have on future years. So I have a little procedural problem, but I also do firmly have the view that we should not use the PRA funding for this effect.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dober?
And one of these times I'm going to remember to unmute. I guess with Charlie talked about maybe not taking the money out of there. Didn't we? What was the relief fund that we got from the provincial government? Wasn't that 2.7 million?
That was part of the COVID relief, and we got almost 2.8 million, I think 2.73 or something million.
So maybe a suggestion is we could take it from there. But then my other part, just looking through like all the reductions on here. So this year it's supposed to be a 10% increase. So say we reduce it.
So
by
if I can just,
3%.
Councillor, sorry, I'm just going to bring you back. The motion that we're dealing with is just to say that council has, the motion we made in a past was that council will allocate $570,000 of the excess Peace River Agreement money that we received as that Peace River Agreement grant money, and we allocated that all into capital. And my motion that I'm asking to rescind is for that motion to be defeated, because as a process, we can't talk about the next steps until we deal with where that funding comes from. And so that's the motion that's on the table at this point, is council deciding whether they're going to allocate that 570 excess entirely to capital as was passed, or my motion that for reconsideration, that it be defeated.
Okay, sorry. I was just looking on my agenda. All of them had number 2 on it, so I assumed they were all part of one. So that's my mistake.
It's just, if it's defeated, then we would move to the next piece.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov?
So if this motion is not defeated, there is still an option to pursue the source of revenue to reduce the mill rate from other sources. For example, the COVID relief fund or other operational costs. Is that correct?
Blair?
Through you, Your Worship, when the government presented the municipalities with the COVID relief fund, they stipulated the uses for that. This would not be a permitted use, as I understand it.
Thank you.
So, but operational revenue, to reduce operational revenue, to identify money to reduce the mill rate would still be an option.
Yes.
So,
Just not using it, he's talking about cutting 2.5% out of the operational budget. No, he's leaving that. He's saying go cut another employee. Okay. Yes. So if I understand, your question to administration is, could we find I'll use 2.5% as a round number. Could you find that through cutting services within our operational budget or so on? Yes, that's an option.
okay, so I guess my position then would be to keep this money in capital reserve, and if there's a motion later to reduce the mill rate, to look for that money out of operations.
Thank you.
So I'll be voting to retain the motion that's on the table.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship. I take Councillor Parslow and Councillor Javetkov's point. I would just point out that we are on draft 3 of the budget, and we've got a budget consultation coming up on February 6th. So opening the whole 4th, pardon me, for everyone watching at home, it's the 4th. So opening up the whole budget for to find this money, I think, is placing an undue amount of work on staff. And while I agree that in an ideal circumstances, keeping the $570,000 in a capital reserve would be ideal, you know, the goal we set ourselves to shift money into capital, I think we've done very well. And while I think it's important that this council set goals and that we keep an eye on those goals, I also don't want to be so rigid in attaining those goals that we don't leave ourselves some room to be nimble when circumstances require it. And I do think that these circumstances still require it for many in the business community.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilbur?
Thank you. And to some of what Councillor Earl has said, I agree. I don't want to now dive into the budget and start looking in other areas. We're talking about excess funds, though I agree and did at the beginning that we put it into capital reserve. I do think as a council we have been good stewards. We've moved ahead, and I think we're farther ahead in where we wanted to be with that PRA funding to date. And so I am going to vote in favor of it because I think it's excess money that we didn't have before. It's here, so let's use it smartly in order to do the best for the community to move us ahead. And hopefully one day we come to the end of this COVID-19, because the pandemic is the difference for everybody and we're dealing with it as best we can.
Thank you, Councillor. And now we'll call the question on the motion and look to Council. All those in favor? All those opposed? Opposed, Councillor Parslow. Councillor Kemp, sorry, I didn't see.
Councillor Kemp's in favor.
Thank you. The motion passes 6 to 1. And thank you. I'll move now to the final piece of reconsideration, that the council allocate the $570,000 of excess Peace River Agreement grant as follows: that we move 50% of the excess balance to capital and keep 50% in the operating revenue, and that the 50% remaining in the operating revenue be used to reduce the proposed mill rate increase for both commercial and utilities by 2.5%. And if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it. Councillor Earl, The excess that we have certainly was not booked into our budget. It was one of the options that was provided by administration, and certainly we as council, as indicated above, we made the decision to move it all into capital, and I'm certainly fully supportive of the long-term plan that we have in getting us to that reduction on Peace River Agreement funding. But as I've explained, the view I have is the double-digit increase that was proposed, and I have no problem explaining what the proposal is today for our community and our business community. The optics for anyone, and it's not about sometimes how big or how small it might be, but it's the optics for our community and our business community to say they're facing an 11% increase in a difficult time, and for that reason I felt it was important for me to bring it back for reconsideration. Council? Councillor Parslow?
Thank you. So part of the reason for the increase here, I would call it a bit of an extraordinary increase, is because of the decisions made last year. My recollection is about 5% of that is due to the decision made last year, which I was also opposed to. This will have an impact, I believe, according to information given to council today by staff, on the rate next year. And so my reflections are that the 5.75% projected increase in the 5-year plan for 2022 was going to be 5.75, and if we keep to the 5-year plan for 2022, the commercial and therefore utilities would be 8.25, which again is something we'd have to wrestle with at that time. Again, as I stated earlier, my problem with this is primarily we're subsidizing the operating budget with the PRA revenue, which is really the root cause of many of the issues that we have been dealing with in our finances. I believe if council was to had desire to cut the proposed mill rate by 2.5, we should explore reduction in our operating budget. Thank you.
Thank you. So the aspect to me is the look back, the look forward for our business community, and we're seeing a return right now to the energy sector, and we're hearing that this summer the commercial activities in the region could be very much positively influenced by that. And to me, the aspect that I'm concerned about is how do we help ensure that we buffer them as much as possible. 2 months ago, I looked at the hotel resident occupancy rates in our community. It was 30 to 35%, and some as low as 10, 15%, and the other sectors were closed. And so I think, to me, it's the aspect for the businesses, do they have the revenue coming in to be able to offset their fixed operating costs? And if we can help buffer that a little bit this year, and they return to some normalcy in 2021 and 2022, their capacity to maybe see an increase next year might be better able to accomplish that. And it's for that reason, I think today, the impacts they're still suffering, I think we need to try to find a way to help accomplish that for them. Councillor Dober?
I'm just a little confused if I'm talking out of order or on the wrong part of the thing.
I'll fix that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but so if we do the 2.5% reduction, just based on what Charlie said with the numbers, we would be roughly about 8% increase this year, and then next year would be another 8%. Is that right?
Yes, that could be the implications of reducing it this year. Then, in order to build a 5-year plan for what we have set, then that could impact the commercial rate next year if council sets it at that point. And then again, you got assessment and all of those things that could impact that as well. So it might be more, it might be less, depending on market.
I think that's fair to the businesses, in my opinion, so that's all I had.
Thank you. Further discussion? Further comments, council? Councillor, go ahead, Blair, and then Councillor Parslow.
Just, I think there was some comment made about the relief that Mayor and Council gave last year. I just want to, maybe for clarity. So in the 2020 budget, when the pandemic hit, there was our budget was amended to look at mill rates at that time, where the projected increases that were in our plan were put to a stop. So we're not going to raise those mill rates in 2020. They're going to remain at 2019 rates. Council also made a step further that said not only are we doing that, but because of the impact on the commercial sector, we're going to reduce that mill rate by an additional 5%. So last year would have seen not just a 5% reduction, it was a total of 7.5%. I think I'd heard 5%. I just wanted to bring that up. Very important move by council to help the business community, but at some point that had to come back to be recovered to continue the operations of the city, and that's what we're seeing in this discussion today.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow.
Yeah, I just referred to the actual year before reduction, yeah, so thank you. The staff has done some sterling work in showing the impact of this, and I'm focusing here, just so the rest of council knows where I'm at the reduction of commercial tax rate at 2.5% and its impact on businesses. And I'm sure all council have studied these figures. We were given them yesterday. We had all last night to look at them this morning. I see very little impact. I was wondering if staff could comment about the impact that this would have. I mean, some of the comments I received, and after you share this information with business people, when talking about Poose Coopy and Tumbler Ridge, they realize that it's an apples to oranges comparison, and the impact of last year wasn't significant in actual dollars. So what about this for this upcoming taxation year? Its impact in dollars to business community? So
A hotel, as an example, its tax bill is $150,000. You reduce it by 2% or 3%. You're talking $3,000 or $5,000 in terms of an impact of real money that's they're not paying. And there are tax properties in our community that are at that level. I think the message to me is more about every little bit of operating costs that are fixed costs that impact the business, impact their ability to sustain themselves in providing services in our community and creating jobs and spending. So to me, it's the issue about how do we ensure we look after and help those businesses with every little piece of their fixed operating costs that help them sustain themselves through this year. And I don't know if administration can give us some of the analysis of some of the highs, lows, or impacts to business. Flavia?
Yes, so through your worship, before the suggestion of 2.5% based on the approval, the proposed rate at 10.86 originally represented that 41% of commercial would be paying less taxes than last year, or paying around $100, right? And the main impact was on those that would pay over $1,000. With this reduction of 2.5%, you can see that those increased slightly the numbers of rows that you pay less. But you can see but from 217 rows that was going to pay 1,000 more, now we are talking about 161 rows. So you're dropping from 217 to 161, that you see less than 1,000 increase. And normally these are the major commercial organizations.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow. Councillor Parslow.
Yeah, thank you. So if looking at this same chart there, the average increase in taxes for in the community for business would be $691. Yes? 648. Okay. So that is about $1.70 a day, $1.75 a day.
Everybody, sorry.
Yes, so I was correct. So $691 a year, which is $1.89 a day reduction in taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question now, Council, on the motion, and the Council will allocate the excess into both operating and capital, and the remaining in the operating revenue will be used to reduce the mill rate for commercial and utilities by 2.5%. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Javetkov, Councillor Parslow opposed. Councillor Dober, sorry, you're
In favor.
in favor. Councillor Kemp?
In favor as well.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-2. And that deals with the three items that I wanted to bring back for reconsideration. Council, I appreciate your discussion and interaction today on the motions for reconsideration. And Councillor Parslow.
Just here, a point of order, and just to set the record straight, do we not have two people who made the motion earlier on? I've just withheld my comments until the end of the meeting. Procedurally, so when we had the final, we had a motion, there was one amendment, and we dealt with that, then the second amendment.
Yes.
And then we had the motion as amended twice.
Yes.
You had made the motion. And then what we had is somebody else made the motion.
Okay.
And so I'm just saying,
Brenda?
who on record is going to be on record making the motion?
Thank you for that. Brenda?
Yeah, through your worship, the original motion was moved by Councillor Parso, seconded by Councillor Javetkov. And those were the motions, that was the motion that was originally amended twice. So it will stay with the mover of Councillor Parslow and the seconder of Councillor Javetkov.
And as it's amended.
As it was amended
passed
twice.
with councillors voting in favor or opposed. Because it's brought back then on that basis. Thank you. And so now, immediate questions, we don't have anyone. So now a motion to recess to closed and a resolution to move into the closed to the public for agenda items 2.1 under section 90 minutes, as previously noted. Moved. Councillor Earl, second. Councillor Wilbur, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we'll recess and take a 5-minute break in order to allow our recorders to move their equipment.